In seeking phase, you actually start the cleaning process. Okay. You really dive in and start seeking, first of all, that deeper connection to your spirit. That is one of the most delicious things about that seeking phase. You understand that there is a self, there is a light, there is a joy, there is something more delicious that is you, and you claim it, you own it, you sit with it, you allow it. That's what meditation is. Meditation is the allowing of the love affair with yourself, that bonding with yourself in the most deep and delicious way. It takes courage to step out of your known societal, religious, school system, politic way of thinking, of operating, right? And so on today's podcast, I want to talk about the three stages of growth and how there's actually six of these stages, but because of time limits, I'm just going to cover three of these stages. And actually, I have a free training on this. So if you want to get to know all six stages before the next podcast, then no problem at all. Just jump on to any of my platforms and you'll be able to access the six stages of human evolution which is absolutely free, which I'm teaching for people that are going to be working on themselves and understand what it's going to take to move humanity forward, to step up as a powerful leader in the world. We need to go through the first stage that most people are sitting in is something that I call the sleeping or dormant stage. So I want you to think of this as a seed that hasn't sprouted yet. Yes, a seed that is full of potential, a seed that can become an oak tree, a seed that can become the most wonderful apple tree that nourishes, the whole village. So there is potential in all of us. And that potential, when left untapped, is in a dormant state, which I call the sleeping stage. Now, when I had that experience in my first ever meditation, I was in a sleeping stage. I was in a dormant stage. I was not aware of my true potential. And the reason I wasn't aware of my true potential is because I had not been taught this by anyone in my family. My family's teachings towards me about my spirituality was based on what they'd been taught from their parents and what they'd been taught from their parents and their parents and their parents. I had generational ideas about spirituality, about money, about sex, about relationships handed down to me. And some of those ideas, as you guys know by now on the Spiritual Rebel podcast, I am challenging everyone to examine themselves and really look and see where are you operating inside of the parameters of just what you have been told to do. It takes courage to step out of that box, to step out of those ways of thinking, operating, and being, and to step into a new version of yourself. Now, I did have the great fortune to be hundreds of kilometers away. Yes, from Zimbabwe to India, it's maybe thousands of kilometers away from my family. And back then, there was no internet. Okay. So there was no way for anyone to contact me. I remember my family having to contact me through fax. They needed to use a fax machine if they wanted to reach me. There was in the hall where we would have the meditations and the meetings, there was a telephone there, and that only rang if or got answered if somebody was around at that moment when they would happen to call. But most of the places to stay around in that area didn't have any phones either. So my parents couldn't reach me directly at the place where I was staying. So I really went away from the influence of my family and entered into a new world where I was able to really examine myself and move from that sleeping stage into the second stage, which I call the awakening. When you enter into an awakened state, it is a bit of a shock to your system because you start to realize that a lot of what you have been conditioned to think and all of your feelings and your reactions to life are kind of on autopilot. It is not your original, authentic way of expressing yourself, whether that expression is through what you're going to do with your career, whether that expression is how you want to show up in your fashion sense and how you want to dress, whether that is your belief systems about what you discover about yourself. When you go through the awakening stage, you start to realize the thick layer of conditioning. It's kind of like you see that you're wearing a pair of glasses that are literally dirty. Yeah, you're wearing and you're walking through the world with dirty glasses on. Yeah, or you're driving a car with a dirty windscreen. So as you start to awaken, you start to understand that there is work to do, clean up that windscreen, okay? To clean those glasses. And it's not about taking on rose-colored glasses, but it's about understanding that you are participating in your life through your thoughts, feelings, and actions. I lived in victim mindset, and many people do when they're in that dormant stage, that sleeping stage. There is a level of total lack of responsibility for one's actions, feelings, and what one is doing every single day. And this is normal. This is normal because if you're taught that you are a victim, poor Mahima, your husband, you got married at a young age and then you separated from your husband and, and now you are a divorcee. Oh, poor one, right? Yeah, that's true. I am a divorcee. I'm only 22 years old, but I also partook in that relationship in ways that wouldn't be able to serve a long-term relationship. So I showed up with my toxic energy and attitude, right? That I wasn't even aware of because you're not aware of yourself when you are in the victim mindset. You're not aware of yourself when you're in that dormant sleeping stage. You're aware of everyone else and you blame everyone else for what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And even as I'm telling you this, I want you to be very aware that it's not about feeling more superior than people because you're like, well, they're still in the dormant stage and I am, I've awoken and now I'm, a wise ass. We do not want to use that approach when we are building ourselves up from the inside out. These stages are just to help people understand the process involved in going from a disempowered version of yourself to a powerful, unstoppable version of yourself, right? And this process is only happening inside of time. When you understand the power of the now, there is no process. There is no becoming. There is no, I'm over here and I need to get over here. Okay. That exists in time. So, I'm 22 years old. I'm, messed up from my childhood. So I marry this man. I bring my messiness. He brings his messiness. We don't know how to operate. And so we end up having to separate, right? And maybe in our next relationship, we will be a little bit wiser, but most people won't be if you don't have some form of an awakening, some sort of a breakthrough that makes you grow. You will be the same victim in the next relationship. And so you keep bringing your past into your present, into your future, right? So the work that I love doing is really helping people to bring their energy out of the past, out of the future, and into the present moment, right? When you're in the present moment, you realize that the past is gone. There's nothing you can do about it. The future hasn't come yet. And so you can be part of creating the future that you truly want. But you can't create the future that you truly want when you're not able to be present in the moment where you can examine, are the thoughts that I'm having, are the actions that I'm taking actually going to guide and direct me towards what I want? Or am I going to be self-sabotaging myself? Am I going to be drowning in negative feelings, thoughts, and therefore negative actions, right? So presence is really the key to transforming oneself. And then that journey that happens only in time and only to the physical body, that sense of process, right? So the Mahima that had that magical experience in my first ever meditation then started to go through this deep process of transforming myself. In my case, millions of miles away from my family, which actually helped me because I didn't have to explain to anyone why I suddenly was doing this, why I suddenly was doing that, why I suddenly looked different, acted different, thought different, right? Was thinking differently. So for me, and I believe for anyone who's going on this type of a very deep transformation, be very respectful to take the time for yourself. Yes, to take the time for you to evolve from that dormant stage and imagine a seed, something starts to sprout, right? To take and that is it's a very fragile time when a seed is sprouting. That's where ants could attack it. That's where birds could come and scratch it out of the earth. It's in a very vulnerable state. So you need to really surround that sprouting seed with the best chance and possibility of it becoming a strong plant, growing strong roots into the earth, right? So it's a very important time when you are in this awakening stage to be very conscious of taking some time away from your known people that would expect you to operate in a certain way, and maybe that won't be as supportive to your new discoveries about yourself or you questioning yourself. So in my case, I started to question everything, okay? Because I started to see that, oh, I can actually live my life, everyday, daily life, with inner peace, with feelings of joy, of ecstasy, of bliss. The teachers that I had started to teach me that I didn't need to stay in a permanent state of misery, fear, and suffering, that I could relax, let go, and really be inside of what I call your divine self, my divine self. So allowing, this allowing myself to be immersed in these new teachings and new ideas was really the greatest gift that I have given myself so far while being on this body. Okay. That I gave myself that time. And in my case, it was 18 months. Yes, I stayed in India for a whole 18 months. And in those 18 months, I went to daily meditation sessions. After the meditations, I would hang out with people from all over the world, from different religious backgrounds, different societal doctors. Some people were doctors, some people were nurses, some people were teachers, some people were, like myself, ex-model, people from all walks of life, right, that had gathered together to share spiritual development, and spiritual communion, to look at how what they had been taught wasn't serving humanity, wasn't serving themselves to live vibrant lives of being responsible for what you're creating instead of being the victim, which is what I'd been taught to think. These teachings started to teach about being responsible for your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And as I started to take responsibility for what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and my belief systems, I moved into the third stage of consciousness, which I call that the seeking phase. Okay. This is the phase where you really start to seek to understand more about who you truly are. The question, who am I? Who am I? What is this all about? Am I put on this planet to work, 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 and then die, and that's it? Am I put on this planet to hate men because they're not reliable, and many of the people in my family, had negative experiences with men, and so as a woman, that's my position in life. Men are assholes. Men can't be trusted. Men are, I'd had sexual abuse happen to me, so I had stories. In the seeking phase, you start to question and you start to transform. You start to understand that, oh, these ideas, if I hold on to them, will be part of what creates what I'm creating in my life. You start to experiment and you start to experience as you start changing your thoughts, changing your beliefs. You start manifesting different things. You start manifesting miracles. You start manifesting things that you could only dream of, right? So as I started to go through this massive transformational process, which I call the seeking phase, right? And what's the difference between the awakening phase and the seeking phase, right? In the awakening phase, there is still a lot of fear to really dismantle the old belief systems. There is now an awakening has happened. There is a realization that something's not right. There's maybe some experience with a different way of experiencing yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Now, some people have this awakening through something negative, right? Something negative. So, for example, if you get sick, right, that could be something that would put someone into a more awakened state, like, oh my God, my health really matters. I can't just keep pushing myself. I need to start working on, my mental wealth and my physical wealth. So that can be a way that people awake. In my case, I got an awakening through a positive experience. My first ever meditation, yeah, opened a portal in which I was able to access side of myself that I didn't even know existed. Now, on some subconscious level, we all know that there is something more to us than just the negative thoughts in our heads because we've experienced, yeah, our divine self. Every single day, you are somehow moving in and out of the connection with your more wise and deeper self. The work of awakening is when you suddenly start to really understand, and then you start to put into practice, and that starts moving you out of this awakened stage. You start putting into practice things like meditation, journaling, self reflection, asking powerful questions, having teachers around you, getting around communities that challenge the way you've been thinking about things before. So, when I spent this time moving, let's say, from that sleeping to awakened to seeking phase, that was literally in that 18-month period that I was in India. But I actually continued to be in the seeking phase for many, many years, right? Like at least 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I didn't know there was more beyond seeking. There are three other phases beyond seeking. tune into next week's podcast and I will deliver the other three stages of consciousness, right? And I created these six stages because I felt that it's important that people understand the process of developing yourself into from victim mindset to empowered mindset, from feeling small and feeling disconnected to feeling oneness consciousness and feeling empowered, right? From feeling a lack of abundance and fear to feeling unstoppable and having abundance be part of your everyday existence. So when we understand this is a journey in time, right? Because yes, you can have an awakening like that. You can have been asleep and then boom, something can happen to you like it happened to me. But that shift, from sleeping to awakening, that happened instantaneously. But the progression from victim mindset to empowered mindset, that took some time, right? Because what happens is you will have experiences that confirm that there's a direct correlation between what I'm thinking, how I'm acting, and what's actually going on with me and what I'm creating. You'll start to really understand that there is a direct relationship. But to take responsibility for that, because it's so ingrained and so brainwashed inside of us that no, 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 poor one, you're a victim of the circumstances. Yes, like your family was poor, so you're going to be poor. The people that you know, they had limited school education, and so you are going to also have to experience that. So we naturally just believe what we've been told about what's possible. When you start to move into a very deep level seeking, you start to see that no, 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 no. I do have impact and influence over my surroundings and what's happening to me and the choices that I'm making. Let's say you are as poor as ever, like you really have very, very little. Okay. You're maybe somewhere in a situation and you have two choices. One is to say, there's nothing I can do about this. This is my destiny. This is what I'm meant to be, and to just go deeper into that hole of poverty, right? And then the other one is to say, what can I do? What actions can I take? What thoughts can I have? How can I be part of creating something better in my life? And just that thought process will start bringing ideas towards you that you might not have had when you were in that victim mindset. Now, I know it's very hard for people to believe this, but again, I want to give my story as an example. I, at one point, was in India and I'd spent the money, I'd lent some to my sister that I had, and I had two options: either go home and start working, get a job, what my family told me, like get away from all this India stuff. There's all this craziness and doing all this stuff in India, or find a way to stay in India so I could continue healing and transforming myself. But I had no money. So the past version of me would have let that I don't have money decide my actions. So yes, go back to Zimbabwe, be reasonable, think logically. But by that time, you need to understand, I'd already understood that you get what you ask for in life, what you dare to ask for. You get what you focus on. So wherever you put your focus, you will manifest in that direction, right? And so I said to myself, I want to stay in India and I want to continue learning because I was going through such a deep seeking transformation phase that I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want to go back to Zimbabwe 7, 8 months after I'd been in this amazing transformation. I wanted to stay and continue deep diving and getting more of the spiritual work done. So I made that decision and I decided I wanted to make money. I didn't know how without working. I wanted money to come to me because I wanted to stay in India and continue working on myself. As soon as I'd made this decision, things started happening. Yes, things started to come towards me. And I ended up manifesting a situation where somebody had to suddenly leave their apartment that they'd been renting there. This apartment, I could use it. Basically, I could rent it for like $100, okay, from an Indian landlord. And then I could rent it out to the foreigners that were coming to that place for like $500 a month. At that time, my expenses to stay in India were around like $200, $250 a month. So I could rent another place. I could make an extra $250 on top. I didn't have to work, and I stayed in India and continued my personal growth journey and study. And for me, this was a miracle. Okay. When I was able to create this, my mind basically did this. And then I started asking myself, what else can I create? Because if I could be sitting earning at that time, frankly, more money than I would have earned in a job, okay, in Zimbabwe, because they were still paying crap wages to people, right? I didn't need to work and I could do what I wanted to do. I could be where I wanted to be. And this decision, I didn't have a solution when I made this decision. It's not like I knew the answer and therefore that's why I made that decision. No, I played with the teachings that these teachers were teaching me, which is you're not a victim. You can create abundance. You can create financial abundance. You can create anything what you want. Your job is to get clear about what you want and then watch the magic happen. Okay. So we've covered quite a lot of ground on this podcast. I want to stay focused on those three stages of development. It's a six-stage process. The first one is sleeping dormant. Yes, this is where no questions are being asked about what's going on here. Okay, there is just whatever you have been taught is the way your culture does things, then that's what you do. Whatever your parents told you, this is what it means to be a wife, this is what it means to be a man, this is what it means to be this or that or whatever. You've taken on those beliefs and you're operating without questioning anything, right? When you have an awakening through either positive or negative experience, you start to question. You start to understand there is more to the story of life than what I have been taught, right? You start listening, you start reading books, you start, hearing about Eckhart Tolle or Tony Robbins or, other influential people that have talked about the possibility of mind and developing yourself, right? So you start reading the books, you start exploring, but be very mindful that there's a very clear stage of awakening, which is getting more mind knowledge. In seeking phase, you actually start the cleaning process. Okay. You really dive in and start seeking, first of all, that deeper connection to your spirit. That is one of the most delicious things about that seeking phase. You understand that there is a self, there is a light, there is a joy, there is something more delicious that is you, and you claim it, you own it, you sit with it, you allow it. That's what meditation is. Meditation is the allowing of the love affair with yourself, that bonding with yourself in the most deep and delicious way, finding safety inside of yourself, finding that voice that will guide you to say things like, Mahima, don't go back to Zimbabwe. Stay here and continue healing and transforming yourself. You become quiet and still enough to hear that voice, to follow that guidance, to take that risk, even without knowing how it's going to happen. Yeah, because I believe you need to decide first, and then the universe will come to support you, right? So it's not, hey, universe, support me. So I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want, but I need your support. No, that's old school thinking, right? Ask and pray. Somebody might answer something, right? No, you need to be clear. I want to go this way. And I want to go this way because I know myself. And I know that that would be the most delicious and yummy thing for me as a person who was mentally, emotionally, and even to some extent physically broken, I felt that staying in India and seeing myself growing, getting these deep roots into myself, yeah, seeing my strong branches starting to get stronger and raise up towards the light was so important that it was an easy decision to say, I don't know how I'm going to stay here. I don't know how I'm going to make money, but I am fully guided to make that decision. And then as soon as that decision was made, and that's how it works. The universe conspires to support you to get the support that you need. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Yes, it is a process. Waking up is a process. If you can give yourself that time, if you have woken and you feel like you want to go deeper and move into seeking, find the right people. I did. I found teachers. I found communities. I was with like-minded people. I was not trying to do this alone. And in those communities, I found like so much joy and peace and laughter and positivity. It was just like an explosion of that. And I loved that. And I want to support you as well and encourage you to find communities that you can belong to and do your journey back to your sane, sacred self. Yes, by being surrounded by the right people and the right ideas. Understand that it is a process in time to a certain extent, but there's also this place where there is no process. There's just being here and now. And that power of the now is super important. Tune in to the next session where I will teach you the other three stages that you move from after the seeking, after let's just do it one more time: sleeping, awakening, and seeking. And then there's three other stages that you move into. So, love, can't wait to hear your comments. Where are you in these stages? Please, please, please remember that this is not a hierarchy, right? This is not a I'm better than you. Think about it like this. There's an egg and there's a sperm. They come together, they cause an embryo. That embryo becomes a baby. That baby is born and becomes 1 year old, becomes 2 years old, becomes 10 years old, becomes 20 years old. At any stage, is that baby, when it's, let's say when it's 5 years old, is it more important than a 1 year old? Yeah. Is the 1 year old more important than the 20-year old? Is the 80-year old more valuable than the 50-year old? So no, it isn't. So this is not a hierarchy. This is a development process of the spirit, and it's delicious. And if you know where you are, you know the next step, so you can keep growing and maybe even move into some quantum leaps in your personal growth. Love you all, and thank you for sharing. Share this podcast. Thank you for listening. So, so much love. Until the next time. Bye.